issue is you just want her out of the state of Missouri.
Hey, he's calling down right now.
Let's just give him a minute.
I just need a minute, okay?
I kept asking questions. I'm not understanding what the deal is here.
Right.
You cannot be around alcohol, period. You cannot be in an establishment that sells alcohol of any kind. Doesn't matter if it's a restaurant, doesn't matter if it's a bar. You cannot be around people drinking. It's a big no-no.
How is she on parole or probation or whatever you want to call it, and she gets so much freedom? She can go to any state that she wants. I have never seen anything so lenient.
There's a couple of reasons why Gypsy-Rose Blanchard is headed back to the big house for the rest of her parole while she's pregnant.
Gypsy-Rose Blanchard, a name that once invoked sympathy and horror, now finds herself at the center of controversy once again. Recently, she took to her TikTok account, posting a video with a song echoing a chilling message. She's untouchable. The boldness of the statement can't be ignored, especially as it seems to be a direct clapback at her former friend and ex-inmate, Nadtha Walker, who exposed Gypsy for violating her parole. But what does Gypsy mean by untouchable? Does she believe she's above the law, above the accountability? As Gypsy flaunts her social media presence, one has to wonder, is she untouchable because she has powerful PR teams and media firms shielding her? Is it because those in authority, the very people meant to keep her in check, are afraid to act? Or is it something darker? Gypsy wielding her influence to silence those who dare to question her. The questions grow louder with every move Gypsy makes. Why is she so aggressive online? Why is she constantly attacking others, picking fights, and acting as though she's immune to the consequences? For someone who claimed to have reformed, this behavior feels anything but humble. And for a woman on parole, shouldn't she be avoiding controversy rather than diving headfirst into it? The answers are crucial, and they lie just beneath the surface of her actions.
Some people might hide from the spotlight, but you're going in a different direction.
Sometimes I kind of feel like I have no choice.
Actions that may soon come back to haunt her. This is where things start to get tricky for Gypsy. At first glance, being in a restaurant where alcohol is served might not seem like a big deal. After all, how many times have we gone to restaurants or events where alcohol is around, but not part of our evening? But for Gypsy, being on parole means adhering to a strict set of rules, and being around alcohol, whether or not she drinks it, can be considered a direct violation. The first person to blow the whistle on this incident was Nadtha Walker, a former inmate and, at one point, Gypsy's friend. Nadtha took to TikTok to expose the situation, claiming that Gypsy knew full well she wasn't supposed to be in such an establishment. According to her, Gypsy's parole conditions were clear: no being in environments where alcohol is served.
You cannot be around alcohol, period. You cannot be in an establishment that sells alcohol of any kind. Doesn't matter if it's a restaurant, doesn't matter if it's a bar. You cannot be around people drinking. It's a big no-no. Most of the time, it is don't ask, don't tell kind of stuff, but you're publicly putting it online that you're around alcohol.
Nadtha's claim was backed up by footage showing Gypsy in a restaurant, accompanied by her father and boyfriend Ken Acker.
Grab one with it. So turn, grab the head. See, I'm gonna take it off. That's on. We'll grab the tail. Open the tail up a little bit. Yeah, grab it. Just spin the head off.
Twist.
There you go. I gotta hold this part here. Okay. Squeeze it this way.
Now, let's break down why this matters. In Missouri, parole rules are quite explicit about keeping parolees away from places where alcohol is sold or consumed. These rules exist to prevent risky behavior or the possibility of falling into old habits.
Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a series of questions. Are you allowed to consume alcohol?
No.
Are you allowed to go to a bar?
No.
Are you allowed to go to a restaurant where they serve alcohol?
Yes.
Okay. Are you allowed to go to a restaurant where they serve alcohol and be with a party that is drinking?
No.
It's not just about drinking. It's about putting yourself in situations where temptation or or legal infractions can happen. For someone like Gypsy, who is supposed to be rebuilding her life, this is a serious lapse in judgment. Natha's testimony made it clear that this wasn't a simple accident. Gypsy wasn't caught by surprise. She deliberately chose to be there, in a setting that she knew could violate her parole. Even though Gypsy didn't drink, being present in that environment is still a red flag for the authorities. Parole isn't a free pass. It's a contract with conditions that must be followed to maintain freedom. And in this case, Gypsy's decision to bend the rules raises the question: what else is she willing to risk? This alcohol incident may seem minor, but in the eyes of the law, it's a big deal. Parole officers don't look kindly on parolees who test the limits of their freedom, and this could very well lead to stricter supervision. Or worse, a return to prison. Gypsy seems to think she's invisible, but these decisions are starting to catch up with her. Gypsy's legal troubles don't stop at alcohol. In fact, her financial behavior has also raised eyebrows, particularly when it comes to her relationship with her ex-husband, Ryan Anderson. Financial disputes between exes aren't uncommon, but when you're on parole and bound by the community order, any attempt to hide or misuse joint funds can be seen as serious misconduct. Let's dive into what happened. While Gypsy and Ryan were married, they shared a joint bank account, as many married couples do. However, after their split, the account remained a point of connection, with both parties having access to it. The community order in place meant that neither Ryan nor Gypsy could make a large transaction from the account without the other's approval. But in true Gypsy fashion, she decided to push the boundaries. Ryan revealed that Gypsy attempted to buy Taylor Swift concert, but in true Gypsy fashion, she decided to push the boundaries. Ryan revealed that Gypsy attempted to buy Taylor Swift concert tickets, a whopping $12,000, worth using their joint account. Fortunately, Ryan's phone flagged the transaction as suspicious, preventing her from going through with the purchase.
We had that order of people, everybody thought it was a restraining order. It wasn't a restraining order, it was a community order. And we could not, like, hide our money or whatever. Like, we had a joint account, like me and Gypsy shared it. I put money in it, she put money in it, whatever. And she had just left, and we filed, and she filed, and then on there it had a community order, you know, couldn't like spend big lump sums of money or whatnot. And this kind of goes with the story of the Amber J. Taylor Swift thing. I got a notice on my phone. It was like a fraud notice. Gypsy tried to buy 2 Taylor Swift tickets with our money and spend like 12 grand on tickets. And thank God my phone caught it. You know, she was like, it's my money, I can spend it. Yeah, it is your money, but she couldn't do that, and that was her thing. And she tried to do that, and Gypsy, that's the only story I'll tell, but yeah, I called her and explained the situation. She didn't realize that's what that meant. So it was one of those when it was her money and my money, but she couldn't do it, and we laughed about it later, but it was just funny. She tried to do that.
But this wasn't just a financial disagreement. It was a deliberate attempt by Gypsy to take control of shared assets without following the rules. It's not just a frivolous expense, it's a blatant disregard for the legal agreement they both were bound to. This type of financial behavior could be seen as misconduct, and for someone on parole, it's even more serious. It shows a willingness to manipulate and bend the rules, which for a parolee is extremely dangerous. Gypsy's behavior here goes beyond a simple ex-spouse dispute. She knowingly tried to use funds that weren't solely hers, violating the trust built into their legal agreement. For someone who's supposed to be working on becoming a better, more trustworthy person, this kind of financial manipulation raises red flags. Parole is about proving you can follow rules and respect the boundaries set for you. Gypsy's attempt to hide or misuse joint funds demonstrates just the opposite. If her parole officer becomes aware of this, it could lead to further scrutiny of her finances and another strike against her.
Let's just give him a chance.
I just need a minute, okay?
I kept asking questions. I'm not understanding what the deal is here. So.
Right.
It's yet another sign that Gypsy hasn't left her old ways behind. Now, let's talk about Gypsy's travel habits, which have left many people scratching their heads. Typically, people on parole are restricted in their movements. They can't pick up and travel across the country without permission from their parole officer. Yet Gypsy has been traveling to San Francisco, Los Angeles, and other locations, attending interviews and conferences with Ken. This begs the question, how is Gypsy getting away with this? For most parolees, moving between states requires explicit approval from their parole officer. And yet, it seems Gypsy has been granted more freedom than the average parolee. Her public appearances, interviews, and travels have been well documented, leaving people wondering whether she's being given special treatment because of her fame.
I have a serious question, and I've never posted about gypsy-rose Blanchard, so can you please answer me this? How is she on parole or probation or whatever you want to call it, and she gets so much freedom? She can go to any state that she wants. I have never seen anything so lenient. So this is a sincere question because I know of individuals who have done far less, and the probation was way more intense. Actually, I don't know anybody that's ever done anything like she did, but I know people just with a DUI, for an example, and it's super, super intense. And Gypsy's just living her best life. So for those of y'all that follow Gypsy, is there something that I don't understand that's going on here?
What's particularly puzzling is that in many cases, parolees are monitored closely. Travel restrictions exist to ensure that they stay within certain boundaries, both legally and physically. Crossing state lines without approval can be considered a parole violation. Yet Gypsy has been able to move freely from one state to another with seemingly no consequences. How is this happening? Is her parole officer turning a blind eye, or is Gypsy simply ignoring the rules, hoping that her fame will protect her from the real repercussions? Either way, it's troubling. Traveling without permission could lead to serious consequences for Gypsy if the authorities catch up with her. The fact that she's been moving so publicly without any apparent restrictions suggests that either the system is failing or Gypsy is banking on her public image to shield her from accountability. But as we've seen with other high-profile cases, the law doesn't care about fame. It cares about compliance. If Gypsy's travels are unauthorized, this could be yet another violation of her parole that she'll have to answer for. Gypsy's behavior isn't just about bending financial and travel rules. It's also about how she's treating others. This is where things take a darker turn. Gypsy has been accused of harassing and attacking not only fellow inmates like Nadtha Walker, but also content creators who speak out against her. Through her friend Bree, Gypsy has been orchestrating online attacks, using others to do her dirty work while she tries to maintain a clean public image. Let's start with Nadtha Walker. Nadtha has been vocal about how Gypsy has gone after her, sending her accusatory and threatening messages. Gypsy reportedly couldn't handle the fact that Nadtha was speaking out about her, so she resorted to intimidation.
The only thing I wanted for you, Gypsy, was nothing negative, nothing bad. It was just for you to use your platform for good.
But Gypsy didn't stop there. She also enlisted Bree to go after content creators who criticized her, essentially creating an online army to silence her critiques. Bree in live sessions has openly admitted to targeting specific people on Gypsy's behalf. These online attacks aren't just petty fights. They are deliberate efforts to bully, intimidate, and harass others into silence.
So this might be a wild theory, and I might be completely wrong. I'm not sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if Bree was the one who reported Gypsy to her parole officer to create a whole storyline, because why is this like this? Like, all of a sudden Bree inserted herself in a situation and created this whole problem, and she's now outing the fire? That's normally the people that started. I wouldn't be surprised.
And while Gypsy may not be the one directly sending the messages, she's clearly behind them, orchestrating the harassment through Bree. For someone on parole, this is a dangerous territory. Parolees are expected to maintain good behavior and avoid any form of harassment, bullying, or threatening behavior. Gypsy's involvement in these online attacks, even if it's through a third party, could easily be seen as a violation of her parole. Encouraging someone else to do your dirty work doesn't absolve you of responsibility. In fact, it shows a deeper level of manipulation. The pattern here is clear. Gypsy is still using manipulation and control to get what she wants, just like she did in the past, and for someone on parole, this kind of behavior could land her back in prison if she's not careful. Finally, let's talk about Gypsy's attempts to control the narrative by silencing critics through false copyright strikes. Several content creators, including Nina Flawless and Conspira, have come forward sharing their experiences of being targeted by Gypsy.
Gypsy-Rose Blanchard filed a false copyright claim against my YouTube channel, thus resulting in my channel getting a strike. I know some of you may already know this by now. I also posted a video going over this on my YT channel. But the most insane part of all of this is that in order for me to appeal this strike, I have to provide Gypsy-Rose Blanchard with all of my personal information, my first and last name, my address, my phone number, all of it, because YouTube does not have the ability to uphold a copyright claim. So if I want to appeal it, then Gypsy would have like 7 to 10 business days to file a lawsuit and take me to court. So they need that personal information in case that happens, which is absolutely insane. Why are we allowing this? I could see people doing this just to try to gain personal information about people. Also, very strange that it only happened to me and Nina when there are much more and much larger YouTube channels that have posted content of Gypsy's, yet only me and Nina got copyright strikes. We also had Gypsy's friend, Bree, on a live stream discussing the copyright claims, in which she says that mine is in fact a false copyright claim and falls under fair use, in which we have Gypsy in the comments saying that her PR team, because she's saying her PR team did it and not her, that they are not going to contest the appeals and they're just going to let the time run out, thus resulting in our videos going back up on YouTube. So if that's the case, and you're not going to uphold the copyright strike, why should I have to give you my personal information? Because that's making it seem to me that that's what you want. Why can't you just go into your YouTube channel, which you can do, and retract the copyright claim? Why do I have to submit an appeal and give you all of my information? It's just not making sense to me. If you want to see the full video I did going over my copyright claim, what video it was, and all the other details, it's on my YT channel if you want to go check it out.
These creators are providing fair use of commentary and criticism about Gypsy's public persona and actions. But instead of accepting the criticism, Gypsy decided to use copyright law to silence them. Copyright strikes are supposed to protect original work, but they are often abused by those who want to silence criticism. In Gypsy's case, she filed false copyright strikes, claiming that these creators were using her content without permission. In reality, their content was well within the bounds of fair use, which allows for commentary, criticism, and discussion of public figures. This wasn't about protecting intellectual property, it was about shutting people up. For someone on parole, engaging in fraudulent behavior, even if it's through the misuse of copyright law, can be seen as harassment or manipulation. Gypsy is using every tool in her disposal to control the conversation about her. But in doing so, she's crossing the legal line. Filing false copyright strikes isn't just unethical, it's potentially illegal, and for a parolee, this kind of manipulation could lead to serious consequences. Gypsy may think that she can silence her critics by using the system against them, but in the end, the strategy could backfire. If her parole officer catches wind of her fraudulent behavior, it could be yet another violation that adds to her growing list of problems. This isn't just bending the rules. This is actively trying to undermine the system. The incident involving Gypsy-Rose Blanchard contacting an inmate while on parole is one of the most significant and blatant violations of her parole conditions. According to Missouri state law, parolees are strictly prohibited from contacting inmates in any form. This rule is in place to protect both the parolee and society at large, assuring that parolees sever ties with individuals who are still involved in criminal activities. It's not just a guideline. It's a legal requirement to prevent parolees from being drawn back into dangerous or illegal environments.
Gypsy-Rose's parole is that she cannot contact anyone who is currently incarcerated. And it appears as though she has been breaking that rule, because these text messages were leaked where she allegedly texted someone saying, "Let Millie know I can't take prison calls anymore. I got a citation by my PO for it. It's a warning next when they send me back."
But Gypsy didn't care. She knew this was a violation, yet she went ahead and did it anyway. The inmate in question was named Amelia, someone Gypsy had been communicating with while using her ex-husband Ryan Anderson's account. By using Ryan's account, Gypsy attempted to hide her actions, thinking that the authorities wouldn't be able to trace the communication back to her. This is an important detail because it shows premeditated effort on Gypsy's part to conceal her actions. She didn't just slip up and accidentally contact Amelia. She deliberately tried to cover her tracks. Now, let's break down what happened when the violation came to light. Gypsy was caught and her parole officer quickly issued a citation, which is essentially a formal warning. The message was clear. One more violation like this, and Gypsy would be sent back to prison.
But there's a couple reasons why Gypsy-Rose Blanchard is headed back to the big house for the rest of her parole while she's pregnant. As we've been seeing, there's a clip going around TikTok right now. It's probably not hard to find of the pregame before Bree's live. And let me tell you, it's very telling. You can very definitely say that that is Gypsy.
You would expect someone in her position to take the warning seriously and realize the gravity of what they had done. But Gypsy, she decided to take the step further. Instead of admitting to the violation and facing the consequences, Gypsy, along with her close friend Bree, decided to plot a deception. During one of Bree's live TikTok sessions, they were caught discussing how they could deceive the parole officer. Bree suggested various methods Gypsy could use to lie, including claiming that someone else had sent the message to the inmate. Bree proposed using an app that could make it look like the messages were coming from a different phone number. With this app, they could manipulate phone records and make it appear as though Gypsy hadn't contacted Amelia at all.
Me back. Now this is Bree, Gypsy's friend. She was on live and she forgot to turn her camera off and continued to be on live and recorded her entire phone conversation with Gypsy. In this phone conversation, which she was accidentally live streaming, she is telling Gypsy to lie to her parole officer and tell her she's not contacting any inmates while she still is.
Think about that for a second. This wasn't just a casual conversation. This was a deliberate, premeditated attempt to deceive the authorities. The plan was to fool the parole officer into believing that Gypsy was innocent, even though she knew full well that she had broken the rules. Bree can be heard encouraging Gypsy to deny everything, telling her to fight for her life, and use the app as an excuse to avoid being sent back to prison. In the live recording, Bree goes on to explain how easy it would be to fake the message, even saying, "They can't prove it, just lie and say you didn't do it." Gypsy's reaction, she was fully on board with the plan. She agreed with Bree, showing no hesitation about deceiving the very system that gave her a second chance at freedom. This shows a level of manipulation that goes beyond simple rule breaking. It's one thing to make a mistake, but it's another to actively plot to cover up, especially when you've already been warned by your parole officer. At the heart of this incident is a troubling reality. Gypsy is not acting like someone who's learned from her past. She's acting like someone who still believes she can manipulate her way out of any situation. This attempt to deceive her parole officer is a clear indication that Gypsy hasn't reformed as much as she might want the public to believe. It's a pattern of behavior. She's trying to use others to do her dirty work, just like she did in the past. Let's talk about what this means in terms of the law. Now, let's talk about what this means in terms of the law. When you're on parole, one of the key conditions is that you must be completely honest and transparent with your parole officer. Any attempt to deceive, manipulate, or lie to the authorities is a serious violation. Missouri's parole laws are clear. If you are caught lying to your parole officer, it can lead to immediate revocation of your parole and return to prison. Parole is not a right, it's a privilege, and it comes with strict rules that must be followed to the letter. By entertaining the idea of using a fake app to lie to her parole officer, Gypsy is walking a very fine line. This is not the behavior of someone who is genuinely trying to reintegrate into society. This is the behavior of someone who still thinks they can outsmart the system, just like she did when she orchestrated the murder of her mother, Didi Blanchard. Gypsy may believe that she can play the system, but parole officers don't take kindly to being lied to. It's worth considering just how far Gypsy has fallen since being released. At first, the public sympathized with her because of her tragic backstory. But as these incidents pile up, it becomes harder and harder to see her as a victim. Instead, we are seeing a pattern of manipulation and deceit that is eerily similar to the behavior she exhibited before her mother's murder. Gypsy is willing to lie to her parole officer. What else is she capable of? This kind of behavior could easily lead to her parole being revoked entirely. It's surprising that the parole officer hasn't acted on this deception already. But make no mistake, deceiving the authorities is a dangerous game, and it's one that rarely ends well for the parolee. If Gypsy continues down this path, the outcome seems inevitable: a return to prison. So where does this leave us? With a string of parole violations, from being in a place where alcohol is served, to misusing joint funds, to traveling without permission, harassing and threatening content creators, using false copyright strikes, and contacting inmates, Gypsy has shown a troubling pattern of behavior. Each incident on its own might be considered minor by some, but when you look at a bigger picture, it's clear that Gypsy is playing with fire. The question now is, will these violations catch up with her? Will her parole officer finally decide that enough is enough and send her back to prison? One thing is for certain. So what do you think? Has Gypsy-Rose Blanchard pushed things too far this time? Will her string of violations finally catch up with her and send her back to prison? It seems like every step of the way, Gypsy is showing that she hasn't truly reformed. Instead, she's playing the system, trying to manipulate her way through life just like before. The consequences for her actions are looming, and it's not only a matter of time before something gives. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe Gypsy is still the same manipulator she's always been, or do you think she can still turn things around? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates on this case and others like it. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload, and as always, thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed and stay critical.